Mother, wife,
Air Force veteran,
gun rights advocate.
This is Stacy on the Right. Here's your host, Stacy Washington.
And we're back. Stacy on the Right. I'm Carrie Pickett. I'm filling in for Stacy Washington tonight, guys. All right. So, we have on the line Sherry Few. She is the president of U.S. Parents Involved in Education. And what a great guest to have tonight, because we are going into another big campaign cycle where, once again, schools are on the docket and parents want to get their voices heard, because it is certainly a big issue that has been going on for the last few years, and I think that there hasn't been a full election cycle as far as the presidential election cycle since Glenn Youngkin was on the ballot, and I would imagine that parents want to really test out where the electorate is right now since COVID came along. Welcome to the show, Sherry.
Thank you, Carrie. I appreciate you having me on. And you're absolutely right. This election cycle should certainly be interesting as far as the outrage that parents have expressed about what's happening in government schools. And I think the elections will be a direct reflection of this outrage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely was the pandemic that really, I mean, U.S. Parents Involved in Education has been around for some time now. I mean, pre-pandemic, correct?
Correct, absolutely.
And then all of a sudden, it was the pandemic itself that all of a sudden made people who weren't political, parents who weren't political, realize, oh my God, there's something wrong in our schools. Well, yeah, it's been like that for decades. Welcome to the club. And yes. How long were you involved? And what was your reaction when all of a sudden you saw all these parents get political, and you're like, yeah, welcome to the club. Tell me about that.
So I have been involved for more than 20 years with education policy. When my children were in government schools is when I started to see problems with the curriculum. And my kids are in their mid-30s now. So that tells you how long I've been involved. And so I saw problems in their geography lessons. I had a very big issue with the sex education standards being pushed in our state. And that's when I formed South Carolina Parents Involved in Education. And then we merged into or expanded into a national organization back around 2016, I think it was. And so at that time, myself and colleagues all around the country were fighting the Common Core standards. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember that battle, but it was an attempt by the federal government to force us all to have the same standards in every state, and really dumbing down the standards far more than it had been in the past. And so myself and others around the country worked for a couple of years trying to get good legislation passed to kill the Common Core standards movement. But we all failed, and we ended up with Common Core rebranded. It's in every state except for Florida. So that's the group of leaders that came together to form the national organization, United States Parents Involved in Education. So then you're exactly right. When COVID hit, and kids were forced to learn at home, and they had their Chromebooks, and parents were home with them, it's like the alarm went off. It's like all of a sudden they realized what's going on and what was being taught to their children. And it was literal indoctrination. It was critical race theory and sexualization of children and inaccurate history, anti-American propaganda. They saw it all. And that's when they got outraged and got involved, and we're very excited to have all the parents that have joined the fight and are helping us to end the indoctrination of children in America's government schools.
That is, that's very interesting, because it's almost like you had to have parents, and well-intended parents, by the way, it's like well-intentioned parents who want the best for their kids, but can't believe what was happening in the schools until they had to see it with their own eyes. Happening in real time. And the only way that was going to happen was if, unfortunately, a pandemic had to happen in the United States. And because groups like yours do incredible stuff, you put stuff out there, you're saying, hey, look, your children are being taught irresponsible subjects. They're being dumbed down by teachers, and then what will happen is the teachers union or you'll have the principals or you'll have administrators who will say you're just bad-mouthing teachers, and teachers work really hard. And look, there are many teachers who work incredibly hard and who do good stuff, but unfortunately you're up against a machine who will simply just try and discredit your work. And until people see it themselves, which they ended up doing, then that's when you get sort of like the juice to your engine, and then you can really start to get things going.
Yes, and your comment about teachers, I agree with to some extent, but what I'm beginning to realize is that many of the good teachers have left.
Right.
They've left this profession because they're not going to be a part of this. And so what we have left are the very young teachers who have gone through K-12 and been somewhat indoctrinated themselves, and then go into the colleges of education, which are the most liberal there is. And that's where the critical race theory is embedded in them, and they teach them how to embed it in every subject at every grade level. So by the time they hit the classroom, they themselves are fully indoctrinated. They really believe that what they're teaching is right. So we've got a level, a multi-layered problem as far as, training the teachers and what they're learning. But it is good, as you pointed out earlier, that parents have woken up and they are outraged and they are voters and they can make a difference with their vote. And I think that what we have to do, and the goal of our organization, is to restore parental and local control of education. Because what we see is that the majority of the nefarious pedagogies originate with the federal government, incentivized with federal dollars, just like Common Core was. And, the transgender movement is being pushed by the Biden administration. So we've got to get the federal government out of education. We've got to restore parental authority and control and local control over education. And then perhaps there is a chance for the government schools. But in the meantime, we don't recommend any parent send their child to a government school. You have to protect your children, and the environment is toxic right now.
So I was looking at your website, at your mission statement and your vision, and one of the things I noticed was you said that in the past you were focusing on abolishing the Federal Department of Education to start looking more at the role of parents and communities in the education of children. And I get that, because that's sort of like where the temperature is right now. However, one of the things that Donald Trump has said, as far as his platform was concerned, as did Ronald Reagan back in the day, even though he couldn't accomplish it, was to abolish the Department of Education. Why have you sort of said, not right now? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that is still our mission. We have not changed our mission. We want to get rid of the Department of Ed and end all federal education mandates. But we knew that when we lost control of Congress and Biden was elected, we knew that we weren't going to have much success on the national level. So that's the reason we pulled back a little bit and started working more on the local and state level, encouraging people to run for school board and providing them resources to do that. But then at the same time, we recognize the opportunity to encourage states to wean themselves off the federal dole. And that could be a better attempt, more successful, if we can get 2 or 3 states to do that and set a precedent for other states. That might be more effective than, the attempt to remove the behemoth that, U.S. Ed has become. But so we recently published a blueprint to establish state control of education. In 2018, we developed a blueprint to close U.S. Ed and drew out a map for how to do that. Because, like you said, even Reagan said he wanted to do it. But who's actually developed a plan? Well, we did that, and recently we developed, like I said, the blueprint. It was published in June of this year. That is a way for states. It's a blueprint for them to follow to wean themselves off the federal dole. And it starts with doing a cost of compliance study, because most people don't understand that on average only about 10% of a state's education budget is derived from the federal government. So if you do a cost of compliance study to see how much it actually costs to comply with all the mandates and regulations that come with that 10%, you may learn that, you're only benefiting maybe 3 to 5%. And that's what we predict. And that will be a good selling point for legislatures to begin looking at reducing the role of the federal government in their state's education.
And in fact, I believe that there was a state lawmaker out in Tennessee,
yes,
who was very interested in this. It was State Senator John Lundberg, who co-chairs a panel, who's co-chairing a panel exploring whether Tennessee can reject federal education funding. It's an uphill battle, but that's something that that he would like to look into, and if that's sort of a foothold that I would imagine that you're probably excited about there, because at least you have one state legislator who has interest. Yes.
In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the the Tennessee House of Representatives formed a committee, and maybe that's the committee, or maybe it was the Senate. Anyhow, I was aware that they have a committee in place that is beginning to look at this. And we have a connection through the Pastors Network in Tennessee, and we're hoping to be able to meet with some of these legislators and share our blueprint. And there's a couple of other states, too, that have talked about it and floated the idea. So like I said, if we can get 2 or 3 states to set the precedent, it could really be the beginning of the end of the federal involvement in education.
Interesting, yes, because then at that point, then the federal government won't have these states with the boot on their necks, saying, well, if you don't teach this, well, then we're just going to rip away funding, and sorry, too bad for you. Okay, which is how a lot of this insane LGBTQ type of teaching, particularly the whole transgender DEI teaching, ended up finding its way into the curriculum. It's, oh, by the way, you don't teach that over the school. We're going to have to pull it. Oh, you don't allow transgender onto the girls' team? Oh, sorry, we're going to pull funding.
That's right. That's absolutely correct. And even with the COVID relief funds that, put out billions of dollars to every state in the nation for education, it was supposed to be to help with learning loss. But 20% of that money that they received, they had to certify that they would advance equity and inclusion and social emotional learning. So, yes, it happens and is continuing to happen as far as pushing that agenda on the states with the federal funding as the carrot.
So I see here you also have a film. Tell me about this. Truth and Lies in American Education. Tell me about that.
Yes. So we produced this film in an effort to expose what is happening in government schools. And we have a wonderful all-star cast of experts who have written books and studied these issues. It's extremely eye-opening. It covers the transgender movement, the sexualization of children, the anti-American and anti-Christian propaganda. It also covers, the inaccurate history, things like the 1619 Project coming into schools and just dispelling truth altogether. And that's why we named it Truth and Lies in American Education, because we want Americans to know the truth about the lies that children are being taught. And it is out and out lies, and it seems like a harsh word, but we can absolutely back that up, and we do it in the film. And I think it's a great film because it's not just a dry, boring, technical type documentary, but it has a storyline, and it's a storyline, the true story of my daughter-in-law, who, when she came to work for me, I had some required reading for her, and she couldn't believe what she read, and she fact-checked it herself and found out and eventually realized what was happening. And so she's making a decision about how to educate her own children, and she interviews each of the experts that are in the film. So I recommend it for your listeners. I think that it's a great opportunity if they don't already know, and even if they do know what's happening in government schools. And in fact, we grant permission for anyone who buys the DVD to share it in large audiences without a licensing fee, because we just really want to get this information into as many hands as possible.
Okay, Sherry Few, founder and president of the United States Parents Involved in Education. If you want to check out her organization's website, it's uspie.org. Once again, that's uspie.org. Sherry, thank you again for joining us here on Stacy on the Right, here on SiriusXM Patriot 125.
Thank you, Terry.
Sure thing. 866-95-PATRIOT, 866-957-2874. Guys, we'll be right back here on Stacy on the Right.